Hi everyone, welcome to another show of SI Life. I am Max Perez,
And I'm Ken Copelson.
and welcome to another great event. We're gonna have a pretty good conversation today. But before we jump
Yep.
into it, let's cover some of the cool, important things that are happening around the world. Obviously, the holidays are screaming towards us. Before we know it, it's gonna be
Yes.
Christmas, and
Yeah.
it's 25 days.
I
Uh,
know.
and I really hope everybody's preparing and organizing because it's gonna fly. There's technically 4 weekends before we start, so please prepare and get ready. Don't wait till last minute because it's gonna be a mad rush. Obviously, we have Black Friday is finishing today. I think it's today, right? I think today. So if you can get last
I think
minute
so. Yep.
last minute purchases, definitely go out there and buy some. There's some lot of savings to be made. It is second last day of November. I have been making an effort. I have a bit of a leech in my face. It's kind of stuck to me for a bit, but I can't wait to shave it off. That's in 2 days. That's great. So that'll be good. And obviously, there's just maybe about 50 days or so for the greatest party of the century. I would say it's the 100-year
Oh, the greatest.
anniversary.
It's going to
Yeah,
be massive.
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 Yeah, if you
Yeah.
if you think the presidential election was a massive, this is going to be way more massive than that.
That's right. That's right.
100 years doesn't come around very often. So yeah,
No.
we that's going to be great. That's going to be straight after the holidays, and I do hope everybody will prepare for that. Yeah, we'll definitely party.
Wait, did you mention what it is? I don't think you did.
Oh, 100 year robot anniversary. Yeah, it's the 100 years since the word robot was introduced into the our vernacular by a playwriter for a play called Robots. What was it? Robata, yeah. What is it? RUR, yeah.
Yeah, RUR.
RUR, yeah. So it's a great play. Obviously, we're not going to replay that ourselves. I think we're gonna take it out of the dictionary if we're gonna repeat the whole play. But definitely, there's lots of online videos of people can watch it. Yeah. So that's going to
Yeah.
be great. Yeah. So I do hope everybody's getting ready for Christmas and for the party. And yeah, let's kick on with the show, Ken. What do you think?
Sounds good, Max.
Sounds good. So today,
Yep.
really, conversation management, and probably one of the topics we want to start off with is um, let's talk about what is the nature of a conversation and what makes a conversation. Um, you know,
So, so we're going to have a conversation about conversation.
yes, yes, exactly, yeah,
That's
because
very, what do you
Inception
call it?
like.
That's fractal. It's
Fraction.
fractal-like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, like I always think that it's like a difference between conversation and a transactional exchange. When you have a transaction, when you're talking to one of these AVI systems and you don't get or a live bot, you don't get the word in a script, and the thing just goes, sorry, please repeat, and it's well, I don't understand what you're saying. So that's very big difference, right, between.
Well, IVR, that's like interactive voice response. This is the systems that people use when they call up on the telephone and it says, oh, please press one or say what it is you want. And then you say a few words and then it kind of knows what you're saying a little bit,
Yeah.
right? But it oftentimes gets it wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what are we really asking? We're asking the nature of conversation
Yes.
itself. Okay,
Yes.
what is conversation, and how does it differ
Hmm.
from the normal way that we deal with computers? Now, normally when we deal with computers, it's a very one-way thing. We tell the computer what we want it to do, and it does it, right? If we don't tell it the right thing, then it does the wrong thing,
Hmm.
okay? Or it just doesn't do anything at all. If you think about the normal interface, it's like there's a menu of selections, all right? You pick what you want and you choose the option and you fill in the information that you want, and you need to know what you're doing. So it's a very one-way thing. There's no interactivity
Yeah.
typically,
Hmm.
okay? Um, even with websites, you click on a link, you go to the thing that you want to see, you go to the next thing you want to see, and it's very one way as well. It's like the computer is really passive and you have to be totally active.
Hmm.
So would you say that the main difference between conversation and what we would call transactional exchange, which is kind of what we're saying here, and it's really in a one-way direction, is that the main difference is that a conversation is two-way. It is, or it tends to be two-way.
It is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're dealing with intelligence on the other side. Okay, we're intelligent, and the other side is intelligent. So it's kind of like a tennis game, back and
Mm.
forth, right? The ball it keeps getting hit back and forth, and you're relying on the other person responding to what you said,
Mm.
and also actually throwing questions or statements your way, and you have to respond as well. How many of us do you think have actually experienced any computer software that gave us either a question or a statement that really kind of caught us off guard, and we had to respond to it, or we had to think and then we had to respond to what it was saying? It's not very often that
No,
that
no,
happens.
no, at all, or
Um,
at all. I mean, it's not something that you'd be aiming for, right? If you think about it, all of the pre, well, kind of the things that have been up till now have been very much about transactional, right? The machines would try to get information out of you or pass to you some information in a very kind of generic, abstract way, like, oh, you have a problem about this, so how about you read an article over there, write about it, right? That kind of stuff, right? It is a bit of it is a knowledge exchange. Like, it tries to pass knowledge to you, but it's not tailoring it to you because it just has a script and it picks out from that, right? Or it's going to do a search. So
right, right.
it's not really, can't really make up new ideas or connect dots for you, right? So yeah, that's why I see it as being transactional, right? Or entertainment value almost, right? Like, you see some of those bots, those little heads that talk to each other, right? I mean,
Right.
these.
And also we're here talking about synthetic intelligence and how it differs from artificial
Hmm,
intelligence.
yeah.
Now, artificial intelligence has produced its attempts at trying to imitate
Hmm,
conversations. So we have something like Siri, or we have something like Alexa,
yeah.
right? These systems. Um, Now, what's your experience with those? Mine is that first of all, I never got the continuation feature of Alexa, which apparently was able to, or is able to, kind of continue on from what you previously said, but it's pretty limited.
Hmm.
And but generally speaking, it's like you say, hey Alexa, what about this, or hey, do this or do that, and it just comes back with a single response, but it can't carry on from there. So it's not really a conversation, is it?
No, it's a transactional exchange, I would think, right? It's just
Yeah.
purely like keywords and certain elements, right? It's, if you ask it questions, it'll just go and Google it for you, which is cool, but it's not really conversation now, right? Because it's just handballing you to something else, something more, even more generic, right? Yeah, I definitely.
Right.
Well, I only have Siri, right, on the iPhone, and she about as useful as just me googling stuff, because she either doesn't respond at the right time or responds at the time where I don't want her to respond. So again, right? She can't tell when I'm talking to her, really,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
she humors me by getting offended when I say that's enough, thanks, you know. So this that
Yeah.
entertainment is there.
Yeah. And it seems like there's no hierarchy to the knowledge, or and there's no goal,
Of course not.
okay, to the discussion, right? So I think that this kind of is maybe a segue into um, looking at the structure
Hmm.
of conversations, and to actually get an appreciation for what does a synthetic intelligence system have to do in order to manage a conversation. This is not really something that can be done by artificial intelligence learning the patterns
Patterns,
of
yeah.
conversation and then following them, in some sort of mimicry way, to
Yeah.
where they're looking back and, well, this is how I dealt with this in the past, because it can really go in many different directions. And I think I think that what we'll see is that there's a structure to conversation, and that there's many different mechanisms that come into play,
Yep.
and that a true intelligent system needs to manage all of these structures and actually deal with it, in some fashion. So,
Should I cue the
what do you?
slide?
Yeah, we have I made a single slide that basically will allow us
Discuss.
um,
Yeah.
to discuss this.
Queuing slide
Okay.
right now. I'm gonna get my film out, slide it onto the thing. Ah, there he is. it's online. Yep, it's on.
Okay, good. So I'm going to have to bring the slide up on my screen, so that'll hide me from being able to see you. So if you give me any visual cues, I won't be
No
able to
worries, no
see
worries.
you.
Oh, fine, that's
Okay.
fine. Yep,
Okay.
it's all good.
All right. All right. So as we see here, we have a conversation uh, between me, and this would be the AI or the SI system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or it could be actually me as a human being, right? So it's in every conversation, there's some person that has the designation as me or I. Okay. So in this conversation, you've got me, you've got Bob, and you've got Joe. In Joe's mind, he has one that says me, and then Bob, and then whoever me is. Like if it's me, then it would be Ken. So he would have Bob and Ken, and then Bob would have one that says me, and then two others that say Ken and Joe. Okay, so each of us is maintaining our perception of the conversation, and then also what we are thinking about, not just ourselves, but what we're thinking about the others who are in the conversation. All right. So as we see here on the left, there's a general outline of what conversations generally have. Now, subject, the current subject, this is the highest level as to what the conversation is about. So like in the conversation we're having right now, the subject is about conversation and conversation management. Then we have a topic which is under that, and in this case it would be conversation structure. The topic we just finished was the nature of conversation. So you can see how you can break down how you're going to approach any given discussion. Now, not all discussions need to be planned. If you get together with your friends and are just shooting the breeze, you might have a very ad hoc conversation where you're going from subject to subject, or from topic to topic. Like friends can sit around and they can say, "Hey, what'd you guys do today?" Okay, so now the subject is, what did you guys do? What did everybody do? And then as each person goes around and tells what they did, that would be the current topic. So if Bob starts telling what he did, then Bob is discussing what he did, and that's the topic. I'm listening, he's talking. All right. And then we can have questions, we can have statements. And as he's describing, and he says, "Yeah, I took my mom to the store today, and she said this and she said that." Well, the she is the current pronoun. The current antecedent for she is his mom, right? Now, when we move to Joe, Joe might talk about his girlfriend. Now, the antecedent for the she pronoun is Joe's girlfriend. Yep. See, so it has to be able to track all of these things as the conversation is happening, and that's one of the main things that distinguishes a conversation, is that you've got these hierarchical things occurring. Okay, so
yeah, that's pretty cool, because that's how it works in a conversation, right? When you're talking to a person, right? And somebody says, my mom, and then you say she, or you say she a few times, but then you mention totally something weird, and you think, you still talking about your mom? Because we as humans, we do that. We have this thing we maintain, right? He goes, oh, he's talking about his mom, but then he says, dad drove a car, and, or he drives a car, and it's like, hold on a second, what? I missed something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you didn't hear any explanation as to who the he is,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or what's even worse is when somebody has referred to a he, right? But then without telling you, they switch to talk about some other he.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
everybody's totally confused, you know,
yeah,
and so yeah, it's the pronoun mapping as to who you're referring to with he, she, we, they, you know, it, I. Well, I is pretty evident.
hmm,
That's me, right?
yep,
But yeah, when you're talking about a third person, or this is where it's it you know it can become a bit confusing
yep,
if you're not clear as to who you're talking about. So this is a big goal of, you know, not just natural language processing, because natural language processing is really just about translating English sentences into thoughts. But this is really about conversation management in an intelligent system. One
mm,
of the big things you're trying to achieve is to be able to use pronouns, because that's the, or to even continue the last thought by modifying it or by
yep,
adding other things to it, right?
yeah, yep,
Yeah. So okay. So then aside from maintaining the current subject, topic, and point that's that's made, along with the questions and statements and the history, like you're memorizing actually what was said, so that if somebody says something different than what they said just a few moments ago, you can catch them and say, whoa, 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 that's not what you just said, you know, and so you're actually remembering their actual words.
yeah,
But then on top of that, you have the conversation stack. And what we mean by stack is that it's like a first on, last off, or last on, first off type of structure, right? Where you, it's like you have a stack of paper and you put paper on top. And so the paper you take off are the last ones that you added on. And that's kind of how it works with conversations. But humans aren't real good at that. Like if
mm,
we get off topic or we start going down a bunny trail, we can usually only get back on track with one level of the stack, right? So if I start talking about something else going down a bunny trail, then I might be able to get back to where I was. If I'm really good, I can like come right back to it. But I usually can't do that twice, right? Where I'll get off track and then I'll get off track again, and then I'll be able to bring it back to the first off track topic, and then back to the original topic.
yeah, yeah,
And you usually people will say something like, "Okay, so where was I? Oh, yeah, what were we talking about again?" Okay, so that's a very common human thing.
yeah,
But a synthetic intelligence system we can make very capable in this regard. In
yeah,
fact, it could,
mm,
you know, technically go down, you know, 20 levels on this and then just back up into all the different levels that it was dealing with. So, yeah, it's
yeah. That's pretty.
now,
That's. I
okay,
think
first of
that's
all,
good. That's good. Yeah, I like that because fundamentally, it comes down to I would think like almost stamina, right? Going down these little rabbit holes. If especially if you branch conversation multiple times, yeah, it requires a lot of stamina, and I think like humans almost, yeah, like the concentration level to maintain these multiple levels of conversation is really hard for people. They want to finish one topic as quick as possible because even then, if they get interrupted, if you get interrupted, what happens? Yeah, like you totally lose it. Yeah, if you have a multiple levels, if you have one level, this you can pause the idea and conversation and restart. But if you have multiple levels, you get interrupted. That's it.
yeah, yeah. Now you know it's going to be very strange for people to deal with computers in an interactive way, that to where the other side seems intelligent,
Hmm.
because then we will lose the sense that we're talking to a machine,
Yeah,
and we will wonder, are we talking to a person?
yeah,
And I had this experience when I talked when I got onto one of these online chat things for a company that provides hosting services, and it was like one of these online help, help desk.
Yep.
And as I was talking to it, I first thought, okay, I'm dealing with an artificial thing here, right? Because it's just very precise and very quick to come back with the response, and too quick, right? And so, but then it kind of responds in an intelligent manner. It's like, I think I needed to expand the amount of space or something, and it asked me the questions. It said, "So how much would you like to go to?" And I said, "This much." And he said, "For this amount, you can add this amount on." And I said, "No, not really." He said, "Okay, so how about?" And it was basically asking me these questions, and I realized that I was dealing with an artificial thing, but it was very quick, very easy to deal with, and got the job done.
Yeah.
So it was rather surreal, right? And even that was not as intelligent as what I think a true synthetic intelligence system will be able to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and you basically, and the interesting thing for you would have been, you would have done it, and you would have been, well, that was actually quite helpful, and you're like, yeah, I'll do that again. It wasn't like, wow, I feel dirty. I got a machine to help me.
no. It felt good because it was more efficient than a human, but it was very similar to dealing with a human.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that brings up this pink box in the middle of the three people. We have person profiles that are being maintained by each of the people, where I'm keeping track of Bob and his emotional state, and Joe and his emotional state, and what I think they're doing in the conversation. And they're doing the same for me. So I'm not only keeping track of what my thoughts are about the conversation, but I'm keeping track of what my thoughts are about Bob and what my thoughts are about Joe.
Yep.
And this brings an interesting aspect up to the whole idea of a conversation. If you remember last time, we talked about goals.
Yeah. Yep.
And goal pursuit. Well, conversations, of course, if they are driven by an intelligent mind, they're going to be driven by goals, because we stated in that last episode that everything we do is in goal pursuit. So even the conversation is going to be in goal pursuit.
Yep.
Like the subject, why are we talking about the subject? Why am I in this conversation about this subject, or about this topic, or about this point? Like, if I make a point, why am I making that point? What am I trying to achieve?
Yep.
Now, it could be I'm just trying to shoot the time. I'm bored and I want to, yak with people. That could be the reason. Or I'm actually trying to find out something. Or I'm trying to share an idea with someone in order to get their feedback, or just to instruct them. Okay, so there can be a lot of reasons as to why we say things. But one of the important aspects of conversation is that it's goal-driven. And because it's goal-driven, that means there's emotions involved as well.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I would be keeping track of the other person's emotion. And people actually get goals in their minds. It's like, oh, I want to make sure I don't get Bob upset, because I'm going to be asking him for something and I want to make sure he's happy. So I'll say something that will make him happy. Yeah. Or it might be the opposite. I might not like this person and I want to antagonize them. So I'll say something that I'm pretty sure will antagonize them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, this happens all the time. People, sometimes people are bored and they want to just trigger somebody so they can see them get upset. This happens all the time on Facebook, for example.
Don't have Facebook, but okay, I take your word for it. It's probably why I stopped using it.
Yeah. Facebook can be brutal.
Brutal,
It's
yeah.
brutal.
Isn't that what they call trolls? You know, the trolls that try to,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. Trolling somebody.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can
okay.
you can gaslight them. Okay, you know
Gaslighting is
what
what are these
gaslighting
terms?
is.
So good.
Gaslighting is where you try to make them think that they're crazy. You know.
Oh, okay, gaslight them. I see. Okay, okay, okay. Well, okay, then well, yeah, I suppose that's a feelings, right? So obviously that's the negative side of it, right? Where people make them, it's like almost cyberbullying we're talking about here, right? So they have a pattern which they, so it's almost like I would think that these gaslighting would be some sort of scripts or patterns or plans that these people carry out, or you would, if in a good scenario, you would, like say if you want to have a conversation, you would use this kind of a script to be able to maybe discuss, like social protocol, right? Or
Well, gaslighting comes from a movie that was called Gaslight, I believe, and it was
gaslight.
a husband who went out of his way to make his wife think that she was crazy.
Oh,
So in other words, he would, like, for example, she might be smoking and she'll put her cigarette out on the in the ashtray that's on the table, and when she wasn't there, he would move the ashtray to a different spot in the room, and then she would come back and she would say, did you why is the ashtray over there? And he goes, I don't, it's always been there. What are you talking about? And
okay,
and so
right.
she would start thinking that she was losing time. Okay.
Yeah.
And basically people do that online, to where they'll say something and then they'll say something else that makes it seem like you must be nuts, type of
Okay.
thing. So
Right. Okay.
yeah, that's a thing that people do. But yeah, these are negative techniques, but a lot of different conversations can be had. Plus, if you give like a speech to a room, that's a type of conversation as well, because oftentimes you'll make a presentation
Hmm.
and then you'll move into a question and answer portion, okay, of the speech, and so that becomes a dialogue instead of a monologue,
Hmm.
but it's still a conversation because you're presenting information. You could be asking rhetorical questions
Yep.
and things of this sort. So
You,
I
you know,
think that is, yeah, go
Another,
ahead.
th- another thing I think of is like when you have those comedians, right? They rely on emotions for feedback, right?
Yep,
So
yep,
because they're actually having conversation, and the conversation is between them and your emotions. Because if they're getting your emotions out of you, then I think what they're saying is right, and what the way they tell that, that it's working. Whatever they're saying is, you're laughing or whatever, yeah, applauding or
exactly. That's your
heckling.
response. That's your response to their statement. Exactly. To their
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's a good one. That demonstrates the emotion involvement, right? Because I suppose when you, like you were saying before, right, when you're listening to a person and you want to make them upset, you're also planning ahead of their emotions, and you're thinking about it, and the thing's going to make you say, make that person the way that it's going to make them feel as well. Which is quite good. And I suppose maybe that comes down to a bit of reinforcement as well, right? You learn these patterns through time, right? You figure out, if I say this, if I say thank you or please, leads, or like my son says, I love you, mommy. Can I have a cake? And you obviously get cake because he said I love you, and then everything has I love you attached to it, right? I love you. Can
Yep.
I have that? And it's like, whoa, hold on a second. Now, I know you learned a good pattern there, and it's worked for you before, but hold on a second.
Well, now that can border on manipulation, right? To
Exactly.
where, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. You definitely don't want to feed that, but yeah, I suppose that's kind of reinforcement, and that's really goal driven, right? Because the goals also aim for kind of feedback as well, right? And that's usually comes to sort of reinforcement, right? So if you've achieved certain goal, you feel happy about it, right? And I suppose that's how you kind of create these kind of patterns within yourself as a script or in the plan that you want to execute, right? So I suppose when you're talking about a
yeah,
chat there, or when you're not chat, but when you're going and doing a like a stage presentation, right? That's like you have a plan, you have all those introductions, and you'll have how you're going to speak about it, maybe questions. That's really like a plan, right? And I suppose the more you do it, the better you get at it as well, right? So your conversation becomes, I suppose, very fluid, right? And you be able, kind of practice of all that stuff, yeah. So another thing, maybe I'm really interested in this. Then, yeah, you mentioned before in a diagram, right? We have me, Bob. So me is basically you as an entity within your conversation, right? So does this
right?
mean that you basically have a conversation with yourself, right? And in your mind, you have a conversation of you plus the other person, and you observing that conversation, or so you could observe it for you with some sort of self-awareness, isn't it? Is how it makes self-awareness possible?
Well, yeah, yeah. Self-awareness is possible only because we can have conversations with ourselves, and or we are participants in all the other conversations,
Mm.
right? So in fact, I would challenge anyone to actually think of a question, right, and that you can then pose without actually thinking of it as a question that you ask yourself. So it's actually holding conversations with ourselves is the common way that we do thinking.
Yeah.
It's because even a person who's trying to find the answer to something, they have to phrase it as a question that, like, I wonder how that works, or hmm, I really would like to know how that happens. And so that's kind of a statement as a question, right? And there's a question implied. So having a conversation of one where you're the only participant is what we would call thinking. And therefore, a conversation with others is actually like a group thinking
Mm.
exercise,
Mm.
right? It's a group thinking exercise.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've covered quite a bit of this on, well, what the notions that leading up to it was, the we're talking about the Akov's rules, right? The wisdom, information, data, right? Where you are having a conversation, you're exchanging knowledge, right? And then you're trying to gauge, did the knowledge land, right? Because it's obviously very complicated to transmit your
Right.
knowledge to people, right? And I suppose, yeah, and having conversation between with like a conversation, group conversation, right? Yourself and the other person, you actually can gauge, I said this and I asked them a question, but didn't get it. So maybe I didn't say it the right way. So I say it again. I suppose that gives you that insight that you just because you said something with someone doesn't mean it's happened. You have to really analyze it. Okay, but did they confirm it or did I confirm it or how do I know they've received it the way that I would do? Yeah, and I suppose that
Right.
allows you for that
Right.
self-reflection, right? And which is
But
important,
if
really.
you could record, like the script of a conversation, right? But you also include in there all of your self-talk
Hmm.
that you're doing, right? To where or if you had to verbalize it, like in that movie, what was that movie with Jim Carrey where he had to? It's called Liar Liar, right?
Okay.
And he had to express all of his thoughts, and so, um, yeah. So if you're talking, and normally you're thinking to yourself, I wonder if I say this, if he will be mad, if he'll get upset. Now, imagine if you had to voice that while you're in the conversation to where you actually said out loud, so I wonder if I said this, if Max would get mad. So Max, da 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 da, and I say that, but you actually heard me say, I wonder if I say that if Max would be mad. That
Yeah.
that's the part of the conversation that we keep secret. So
Yeah.
so if you actually had the whole script, it would include all of those interjections of myself talking to myself,
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about you and the other conversation people as to what do I think I need to say based on that. Or if they say something I don't like and I say, how dare he say that about me, type of thing. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Or even when somebody says something, you think, what did they say? What does that mean? Like you actually say
right,
that to yourself. You're
right.
like, I don't know what that
Yeah.
means. Like I have no idea what that means. So you could, yeah, that'll be great. Like you have a conversation and the person says a bunch of things and you see the other side. I don't know what that means. I don't know what this means. That's over my head. That's over my head. And you're going, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, oh my god. It's like it's a one way. Because sometimes you talk to people and they're just going yeah yeah
Yeah.
yeah, and then you ask them a question about what you said, they're like
Yeah.
yeah yeah, like oh okay, he's asleep, he's just shaking his head going yeah yeah, oh yeah,
Or
that's
imagine if
cool.
he said it out loud. He was like, yeah, yeah, I have no idea what you just said.
I I kind of get that from my mom sometimes. She's like, "Oh yeah, oh that's very good, dear." It's like, "Oh yeah, okay, fair enough." Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, that's suppose yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I suppose that's kind of gives you a bit of a context of the conversation, right? So I suppose one of the
Yeah,
also interesting things, like if this is a context of conversation, right? So SI keeps track of the what it's thinking, what the other person is saying, how it relates to,
right.
and then it makes this context, right? And I suppose as it would have this, because we have profiles, right? So as you would have a profile lifetime, right? You would each person you'd meet, you'd have multiple conversations, and I suppose those contexts would have to roll up to a larger context, right? Somehow, so that we have.
Yeah, like what's in the profile
Mm,
is like, what does this person believe about different subjects? Okay, what do they tend to think? What is their demeanor like, and what's their personality like? What are their speech patterns? Are they generally well spoken and intelligent, or are they kind of sloppy and not very articulate?
mhm,
Right, and so you can start to form this profile of how that person comes across to you.
mm,
Okay, and then so you can start using that to make predictions. It's like, you know, like this person is very touchy about their job. They always evade talking about their job, and so you just know that is something about them. And so one day you suggest to them, you say, if I didn't know better, I'd think you work for the CIA or something like that, because you are always, so touchy about your job. And, you know, and and so you could just throw that out there and see what they say, right?
and the person is
And
going,
and so
no, 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 I'm a cleaner. Oh, you do work for
yeah, yeah.
CIA.
Oh, you're a cleaner. Okay,
Oh,
I
I see.
see.
That's what it's called now these days.
Clean
That's
up
cool.
messes. Do you clean up messes? Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I won't say anything else about it. That's fair enough. I've seen a movie about that. Yeah, I don't want to be on that list. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So in a sense, then we have a conversation context, and it's over time, right? So the profile is more like like almost a CRM about this person, which is kind of what we do anyway, right? We remember things about
Yeah.
people, and we remind ourselves, the whole space of Salesforce. It's all about that, giving that ability for people to persist things. If you're meeting 100 people, you're gonna have
Yeah.
very limited ability to keep track of all the stuff about 100 people. But I suppose in a way, if you have a CRM or you're supposed to, right? Some people are brilliant at this, right? They remember minute details about things, right? I suppose it's a practice
Yeah.
thing, I suppose, yeah. So then, interesting. Then the next thing is, well, how do you maintain the state of the conversation, right? So in a sense, if you have a state of the conversation, just one conversation, right? Um, how do we maintain state of that? And like we mentioned it before, we will have pronoun, right? Antecedents, right? Which basically allow you to, say, oh, this person said this, so that must be in this thing that has been talked about before. Is the
Right.
state something that is it traditional or
Well, I think every conversation has if you want to think about it from a software development perspective, there's an object that would be called the conversation.
hmm,
And inside of there is recorded what's the current subject, current topic, what's the plan of the conversation. If you're the one who's directing the conversation, you might have the plan.
yeah,
And if it's written out, then that would be called an agenda for a meeting, let's say, and you would give that out, and then everybody could look through that and kind of know generally what's coming. But in general, there's a structure
hmm,
that maintains the state of the conversation and maintains the context. And so one of the main jobs of the software that's managing the conversation and actually participating in the conversation is to keep that object up to date and
hmm.
and to adjust it as it's going along. Yeah.
Yep, and to test if it's going. I like your term agenda, like hidden agenda, right? Try to discover what my agenda is. Like sometimes you go into meetings and you don't have any agendas, right? And you're like, oh man, this is going to be a fun meeting, yeah? And it takes you half the meeting to figure out what are they trying to do in this meeting. Oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it'd be
Well,
nice.
what I think is weird is when anybody suggests that other people don't have an agenda. Because if you don't have an agenda, then what are you? You're just floating about?
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
Your mind is in the clouds and you've got nothing that you're trying to achieve, nothing you're trying to do? I mean, everybody has an agenda
Yeah.
in general, don't they? Even the guy who works at the, auto repair shop, his agenda is to collect a paycheck and to fix cars, hopefully with the minimal amount of effort, but to do a good job because he doesn't want to get fired.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's his agenda.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty strange when somebody says you have an agenda, and it's like, yeah, don't you?
Everyone's
You know,
agenda. Yeah, like if you sit in the
Yeah.
office and some guy walks up to you at like say 4:30 and he just starts to chat to you about stuff that's absolutely weird. They have an agenda, and their agenda is probably just to waste a half an hour so that they can go home, right? That's their agenda. You're like, oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's talk about football because that's interesting. Yeah, but yeah,
Now,
exactly.
if what people mean when they say you have an agenda is that what they're saying is you have a hidden agenda.
Yeah,
You're coming across like you have this agenda, but you really have that agenda. Then yeah, I can see that as being disconcerting.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like there's hidden agendas, right? Where you have, I suppose, it may be borderline on manipulation, right? When you have manipulators in your ranks, right? They would have agendas for agendas, right? So that it appears like there's one agenda, but there's something else happening, right? I mean, that's why it's very hard to work with people that they're not very transparent, right? I suppose
Yep.
because then you have no idea where you stand and you have no idea where everyone stands. It's maybe similar to what you were mentioning before, that gaslighting thing, right? Where it's just like you have no idea what's happening, right? Because it keeps everyone guessing, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably a very negative aspect, yeah. And it's probably pretty hard, yeah. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm just mindful of time. We are on to 46 minutes, which is good. We're going well. Let's try to finish before an hour so everybody gets to get back to their online shopping.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one last thing I want to probably talk about. You mentioned before about NLP, right? So NLP and
Yeah.
conversion of in the whatever the medium into thoughts, right? So I mean, obviously, if I look at the way that many other things work, it's not really thoughts for them. It's more like statements and actions. That they can do perform of those, right? So I suppose thoughts for in a context and in the conversation management would be kind of ideas that prompt other questions or other actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that you can maintain those things. I'm quite excited to be able to see it in a way that you have a context that can be persisted, so that you can come back to it anytime and not lose track of it.
And that goes hand in hand with goal pursuit being persisted as well, right? So
yeah,
it's almost like this intelligent mind is just always in a state of pursuing some goal, maybe saying something either to itself or to others in order to achieve those goals. And at any given moment, it's doing that, okay, for something. Very rarely is it just sitting and doing nothing, right? It's like...
Yeah. And also, interesting it'd be to how how we as humans, right, when we're interacting with someone, right, we can only really maintain a conversation one person at a time, right? Because if you start having two conversations or three conversations, it's like you're having branches in your conversation, right? Because you have to stop and think, right? Well, you can't even talk to, you can't really.
Well, I would say you can hold one conversation at a time.
Yeah.
But you can talk to multiple people at once if you're talking to the whole group, right, in your conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's
broadcasting. Think of like when Jordan Peterson gets up and he's talking to a group of people. It's him and them.
Yeah.
And he says something to them, and then they might make responses back to him. So he's actually talking to each one of them, but he's time slicing, each one, right?
And,
he's
and
giving them each.
And you would probably also think that he'd be maintaining context for the whole group, like because you're not going to be individually maintaining context for each person. Like that person laughed, that person didn't laugh, like a comedian, right? They're not going to say, okay, that guy there, I'm going to say something to. Maybe they do. Maybe comedians do that. Maybe they actually single out people and find the hardest audience and think, if I make that guy laugh, I'm going to have everybody in stitches.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe.
Well, as long as the subject is the same, right? And somebody is kind of moderating the conversation, right?
Yeah.
That's what a moderator does. They basically keep the conversation on track.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have many people interacting, but it all has to be a single conversation. That means the subject stays the same.
Yeah.
Or if it moves, everybody agrees that it's going to now move to a different conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, a different subject, right? And if you think about a comedian, that's what he does. He goes from subject to subject to subject, you know? Like his first subject is, you know, a funny thing happened to me when I was walking home today. You wouldn't believe what happened, okay? So that's his subject. He's going to tell you a story. And it's going to have a punchline, and you're going to laugh at the end. And then he'll tell you another joke in the same vein, the same subject, or he'll move on to a different subject.
Yeah. If he gets in your room. Well, then interesting thing to this maybe, say if you have, because you've drawn a diagram, we have a diagram, right? We have a few things there, right? We have me, Bob, and Joe. Say if you're having a conversation with Bob, and what Bob says to you changes your maybe having two conversations at the same time. Like say if you're chatting to two people, right, and one person tells you one thing, and you go, "Ooh, that's actually impacting my conversations." That kind of makes you basically the agent that having conversation to be almost very stateful, because it needs to, like, it knows it's being interrupted in one conversation in response to one. It's kind of not how current like transaction systems work, right? If you're talking to a chatbot, right, like you were having conversation with this whatever the agent was, they helping you with this
right.
it doesn't really get interrupted. It just talks to you only. So if somebody else tells you, oh, by the way, yeah, that's Ken, he's got this much space, like they can't get extra information given to them by something else external,
right,
because they just focused on you, really. So that'll be interesting to be able to explore with people, right? Like, how does it work? Because we do that, right?
Well, that's key. Yeah, that's a key to the way that we're designing the conversation manager. Okay, that we're building, is that it'll be able to have multiple participants, and at any time, the one who's speaking can direct their speech to any subset of the group of people. Right? So it's almost like you have private little chat that you can spin off these three people into a private little conversation at any point.
Yeah, because that's definitely how, if I look at, when we work with on like Slack and all these kind of tools, right? That's kind of what you do there. You make channels, you talk to people, and they impact you because you are like one state and you know about all these things. So I suppose that's where SI is hating, is that it actually understands everyone in one go. It's one big context of everything rather than individual context, and it throws them away because it needs to say, well, John said that last week.
Well, it doesn't throw them away. Yeah, it doesn't throw them away, but it can have them in a hierarchy, right? To where they are isolated from each other. But I mean, it knows what they both said, but neither one of the people in the individual context know what each other has said. So yeah, it's like a Venn diagram, right? Where you have these circles that are overlapping with each other.
Well, it's a graph as well. So I suppose once SI sits and does thinking, it can actually analyze conversations and connect things together and maybe make people aware of stuff. Hey, by the way, I was having a conversation with John. John said this, and by the way, Bob, you should know this as well. And then like, oh, thanks, mate. No worries. It's okay. And I suppose that comes down from care, I suppose, right? So the way where your SI would actually care about relationship and would try to find out things, right? And then it can actually start, impacting people, right? Because we talked about last time, how do we prevent systems from taking over and removing all the humans, right? So it's about them, but it's actually caring for people, for humans, right, and be able helpful, right? So I suppose having this kind of
you can imagine a situation. Yeah, you can imagine a situation where there's a bot that's for customer support, and you ask it to do something, and it looks and says, oh, in order for me to do that, I need to get permission. So then it says, one moment, please. And it goes and holds a conversation with another human that is an authority figure, like a manager. Okay. And says, I have a customer who's asking this and this. and the human might say, okay, so how long have they been with us? Okay, 3 years. Okay, and he wants a 20% discount. Okay, because this has happened. Okay, all right, yeah, go ahead. And so then it comes back and says, well, good news, you've been approved to get that, right? And so that type of, that's a perfect scenario in my mind to why you would leave this conversation and go have another one and then come back to this one.
Yep, that's a good one. Yeah, it's exactly what happens, right? Um, yeah, and I suppose when you talk, even you talk to human call center operators, right? They do the exact same thing. They go, I have to get an approval, and then they replicate
Yep.
that same pattern, right? And that is, and then the whole point, and that's what current chatbots don't do, right? Because they're very specialized, so they don't
Yeah.
have any approvals. They wouldn't be able to appreciate when they breaching the levels of their authority, right? And
Right.
yeah, and the only way you can give authority to an SI is actually make sure it's caring and it's not gonna misuse the authority, right? Like and just do stuff weird ways. Well, anyway,
Yep.
I think we are coming up to 54 minutes.
That's a good. That's good. I think we've covered this subject pretty well.
I think so.
The main objective that I kind of thought was that we wanted people to understand the depth at which a synthetic intelligence will deal with conversations and will manage conversations. One of the things that makes it different than something like an Alexa system, and also why general pattern recognition, machine learning type systems can't really do this, because it has to maintain pretty complex structures and be able to navigate those structures and keep those structures up to date as it's going. So there has to be more of a one-shot learning type of approach to this. Okay.
Totally right. And it's okay because it's a graph of ideas and thoughts, and it has to continuously mold and change that. Where NLP, these algorithms, they're made, and that's it. There is no really, there's no really opportunity for learning. You have to redo the algorithm creation, right? And we know that's how.
Yeah, and I should say a word about NLP before we leave, is that one of the keys to that is to separate the words from the thoughts, right? And to have it to where each word that you learn what the parts of speech are as its function in the sentence, and then those get mapped to the appropriate definition thought, okay, for it. And so you can easily have sentences that would have what would appear to be ambiguity in them, but they can be processed successfully if you actually have the right structure underneath. So I think that a lot of the problems that people have thought exist in NLP are actually easily solvable if you have a different approach than what is typically been used, from what I've seen. Yeah, it's just like tagging of words, I mean, there's like a whole nother video that we could probably do on how to translate English into a thought structure.
Yeah.
Okay. So
because I think what we've seen so far is a lot of times NLPs lose structure and they really generalize sentences, so they just find the things they want out of it. They just lose the context of a sentence.
Well, yeah, they don't process every word and actually make it count, and so
they just basically highlight and just get I need this word, cool, I need this, and the rest, like, whatever, just chuck it away. Yeah, and it's definitely needs to be that. We don't work like that. We actually, as humans, you understand the sentence and you do generalize it, but you generalize as a thought, but you actually understood everything, and then you go, okay, that didn't make sense, can you explain this to me again? Totally understand. Well, all right then. Well, thanks very much. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please, you watched to the end, and if you just move your mouse to the bottom right and you press the subscribe button and you press the little bell, great things will happen to you. You'll have Christmas will come to you, and everything will be great. You know what I mean? You'll be on the Santa's good list. When you do that, Santa knows. Santa's gonna say,
and did you tell people how long we're going to be gone during the break?
No, I have not, but that's a good idea. We're going to be away for 3 weeks. So last show on the 20th, and then we're back on after 15th.
Okay.
But thank
So
you
that's
very much.
that's more than 3 weeks, isn't it?
4 weeks then. 4 weeks, yeah, about a month
4
or
weeks.
so. 4 weeks.
Okay.
But we'll mention it from now on every time. So it's great.
Okay.
All right, then. Thanks very much, everyone, and we will see you on next show.
All righty. Bye-bye.